Have you ever wondered what would happen if Satoru Gojo never showed up that night at Sugisawa High? At first, we must think nothing would change. After all, Yuji would still follow Sukuna's finger, survive the experience, and continue suppressing the king of courses, just like he did in the original story. However, if we look a little deeper, Gojo's absence would create a chain reaction that could completely change the future of Jujutsu Kaisen. Everything starts at the same way as in canon. Megumi Fushiguro arrives at Sugisawa High to retrieve Sukuna's finger while Yuji spends his days with the Occult Research Club and visits his grandfather in the hospital. After his grandfather passes away, Yuji remembers his final words about helping others whenever he can. At the same time, Yuji classmates remove the seal protecting Sukuna's finger, attracting powerful courses to the school. Megumi attempts to recover the finger and protect everyone, but the situation quickly gets out of control. Seeing his friends in danger, Yuji makes the same decision he made in the original timeline and swallows the finger himself. Moments later, Sukuna awakens. After centuries of waiting, the King of Courses finally returns to the world. However, just like in canon, Yuji immediately regains control over his body. Sukuna is shocked and furious because this vessel is completely different from anyone he has encountered before. Megumi is equally surprised. A normal person should have died after consuming Sukuna's finger, even if they somehow survived. They should never have been capable of surprising him. Yet Yuji is standing there completely conscious and in control. This is where the timeline begins to change. In the original story, Satoru Gojo arrived shortly afterward and became the reason Yuji was allowed to live. Without Gojo, Megumi is the only sorcerer present to report what happened. After returning to Jujutsu High, Megumi explains that Yuji can suppress Sukuna and could potentially be used to collect the remaining fingers. Unfortunately, higher-ups have no reason to trust the first-year student. From their perspective, Sukuna has returned and allowing his vessel to leave is an unnecessary risk. In the original timeline, Gojo personally convinced the higher-ups to postpone Yuji's execution and use him to gather all 20 fingers. Without the strongest sorcerer supporting that idea, nobody is willing to listen. The execution order is approved almost immediately. When Yuji learns that the Jujutsu world has sentenced him to death, he struggles to process everything. Less than a day ago, he was an ordinary high school student. Now he is being treated as one of the greatest sorcerers in modern history. Megumi refuses to accept the decision. He witnessed Yuji regain control over Sukuna with his own eyes and understands how extraordinary that is. Believing that Yuji deserves a chance to live, Megumi makes a choice that could turn him into a criminal within Jujutsu society. Instead of helping capture Yuji, he helps him escape. As a result, both of them became fugitives. This is why Yuji's life becomes completely different from the version we know. Never enrolls at Tokyo Jujutsu High, never received proper training from Gojo, and never meets classmates like Nobara Kugisaki. Instead of learning in a structured environment, he is forced to learn through constant survival. Megumi teaches him whatever he can about cursed energy, barriers, and curses, but there is only so much a first-year student can go. Like Gojo, Megumi cannot accelerate Yuji's growth or expose him to deeper secrets of Jujutsu world. As the months pass, Yuji became stronger through experience alone. Every fight teaches him something new, and every mistake could cost him his life. His fighting style became rougher, more practical, and far less refined than in original timeline. While canon Yuji developed alongside friends and mentors, this version of Yuji develops in isolation. Unfortunately, that isolation creates new problems. Without the support system he had in the original story, Yuji carries every failure and every death entirely on his own. Over time, the emotional burden begins to grow heavier and heavier. This eventually attracts the attention of Mahito, fascinated by a vessel capable of containing Sukuna. Mahito decided to investigate Yuji personally. Their first encounter happens much earlier than it did at canon, and Yuji quickly realizes he is facing an enemy unlike anything he has encountered before. When Mahito attempts to manipulate Yuji's soul, he accidentally enters Sukuna's domain. There he receives the same terrifying warning he receives in the original story. Sukuna makes it clearly, touching his soul is forbidden, forcing Mahito to retreat. Also, Mahito survives, he leaves the encounter understanding important fact. Yuji may be special, but he's still vulnerable. At the same time, another observer watches everything unfold from the shadow, and Jack understands exactly what Yuji is and why he can contain Sukuna. As he observes the chaos caused by Gojo's absence, he realizes that many of the obstacles standing in the way of his plans have disappeared. Without Gojo mentoring Yuji, the vessel develops much more slowly. Without Yuji attending at Jujutsu High, he never forms many of relationships that help him overcome future tragedies. Most importantly, Gojo never develops the personal attachment that motivated him to challenge the conservation leadership of Jujutsu Society. Eventually, the difference begins to affect him. Every mission he fails, every innocent person he can save, and every loss he experiences adds more weight to his conscience. Over time, Yuji starts questioning whether the high-ups were right about him from the beginning, and that is exactly what Sukuna has been waiting for. If Satoru Gojo never arrived at Sugisawa High that night, Yuji would still become Sukuna's vassal. However, he would lose the mentor, protecting, and support system that allowed him to become the hero we know today. Instead of growing alongside friends, he would be forced to face the darkness alone, as that could make him even more dangerous than anyone expected. Like and subscribe if you don't wanna miss even more interesting series.